Hello and welcome! In this session, we're going to do a deep dive revision of Emile Durkheim. We'll be focusing specifically on his core theories, the ones that are absolutely essential for your UPSC preparation.
All right, here's our game plan for this revision. First, we'll tackle Durkheim's grand project for sociology. Then, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of social facts. After that, it's the division of labor and solidarity, followed by his famous study on suicide. We'll then explore his ideas on religion, and finally, we'll wrap it all up by assessing his work and looking at its relevance today. So, let's get started.
All right, first things first, what was Durkheim's main mission? Well, his primary goal, his entire project really, was to establish sociology as a proper, distinct science. He wanted to pull it away from philosophy, which he felt was too abstract, and from psychology, which focuses too much on the individual. For sociology to stand on its own 2 feet, he knew it needed its own unique subject matter and, crucially, a scientific method to study it.
And this quote, this right here, is the absolute cornerstone of his whole approach. Consider social facts as things. What does that actually mean? Well, Durkheim was a positivist. He believed that the social world should be studied just like the natural world. So just as a biologist studies a cell under a microscope, a sociologist should study social phenomena, like law or morality or customs, as real external things. They aren't just vague ideas in our heads. He argued they have an objective reality that can be observed, measured, and analyzed.
Now, looking at this timeline of his major works is really useful. You can see a clear progression in his thinking. He starts with the division of labor, which is all about social solidarity. Then he lays down the rules of his new science in the rules of sociological method. After that, he puts his method to the test with his groundbreaking study on suicide. And finally, he goes to the very root of social life with the elementary forms of religious life. Understanding this flow is excellent for adding context and depth to your main answers.
Okay, so if Durkheim is saying we need to study social things, the obvious next question is, what exactly is a social thing? And that brings us right to the heart of his sociology, his core concept, the social fact.
Pay close attention here. This definition is absolutely crucial for both your prelims and mains. Let's break it down. A social fact is a way of acting, thinking, or feeling that is 1. External to the individual, and 2. Has a coercive power over them. Think about it. These are the social currents, the unwritten rules, the structures of our society. Things like laws, fashion, or language. They exist before we're born and they shape our behavior, often without us even realizing.
To really nail this concept for your exam, you need to remember these 4 key characteristics. First, externality. They exist outside of us. Second, constraint. They put pressure on us to conform. Third, generality. They're widespread in a society. And fourth, independence. They don't depend on any single individual. The example of language is perfect. It was here before you, it forces you to follow its rules to communicate, it's general to your community, and it would exist even if one person stopped speaking it. That's a social fact.
Now, this next point is fascinating and a bit counterintuitive, so listen closely. Durkheim makes a distinction between normal and pathological social facts, and his prime example for a normal social fact is crime. Yes, crime. He argued that a certain level of crime is normal in any society. Why? Because it serves a function. When we punish a criminal, it reinforces our shared moral boundaries. Crime only becomes pathological when the rate skyrockets, signaling that something is deeply wrong with society's regulation. This distinction is a goldmine for writing high-scoring, nuanced answers in your optional or GS papers. Okay, let's do a quick micro-revision of social facts. What's the key takeaway? Social facts are the subject matter of sociology. They are external, constraining, general, and independent ways of acting and thinking. Durkheim insists we must study them as things, and he gives us a way to distinguish between their normal and pathological forms. Got it? Good.
All right, moving on to our next section. We're now going to look at Durkheim's first major book, The Division of Labor in Society. And here, he's wrestling with a huge question. As societies evolve from simple to complex, as they modernize, what is it that holds them together? What prevents them from just falling apart? This table right here, this is pure gold for your mains answers. It perfectly contrasts the 2 types of social glue, or solidarity, that Durkheim identified. On one hand, you have mechanical solidarity. Think of simple, traditional societies. Here, people are held together by their likeness. They share the same beliefs, the same work, the same values. The collective conscience, or the shared morality, is incredibly strong. The law is repressive. You break the rules, you get punished severely. On the other hand, we have organic solidarity. This is for modern, complex societies.
What holds us together now isn't sameness, but our difference and interdependence. Think of the organs in a body. Each has a special function, but they all depend on each other. Here, the collective conscience is weaker, and the law becomes restitutive. It's about restoring balance, not just punishing.
Now, this leads to another one of Durkheim's most famous concepts, anomie. This is a key word you absolutely must know. Anomie means a state of normlessness. It's crucial to understand that for Durkheim, this isn't just an individual feeling of being lost or confused. It is a condition of society itself. It happens during periods of rapid social change, when old norms and rules break down before new ones can take their place. This creates a moral vacuum, leading to confusion and deviance. And yes, this is a very, very popular topic for Maine's question.
But Durkheim wasn't just a blind optimist about modern society. He recognized that the division of labor could go wrong. It could become pathological. We've just talked about the anomic form, which is a lack of regulation, but he also identified the forced division of labor. This is when people are pushed into jobs not based on their talent, but because of their birth or wealth, so it's about inequality. These abnormal forms for him explained a lot of the conflict and turmoil he saw in the industrial societies of his time. Okay, time for a quick recap of this section. The core idea is the transition of societies from mechanical solidarity, which is based on likeness, to organic solidarity, which is based on interdependence from a high division of labor. But, and this is a key point, this modern system is not perfect. When it's not regulated well, it can lead to pathological states, like anomie and forced division of labor.
Now we come to what is perhaps Durkheim's most famous study, suicide. And this is where he really puts his money where his mouth is. This is his masterclass in applying the sociological method. He takes what seems to be the most private, personal, and psychological act imaginable, and he sets out to prove, with data, that its causes are fundamentally social. And how did he do it? With data. He meticulously analyzed over 27,000 cases of suicide using official records from across Europe. This shows his deep commitment to being scientific. He wasn't just philosophizing, he was looking for patterns. And by doing this, he was able to move the explanation for suicide away from the individual, things like insanity or personal despair, and towards the social forces acting on different groups.
And this table lays out his famous conclusion, his 4 types of suicide. This is absolutely core. He argued that suicide rates are determined by 2 social forces. First, social integration, how connected you feel to a group. Second, social regulation, how much your life is controlled by norms. The 4 types of suicide come from these forces being either too high or too low. Egotistic suicide happens when integration is too low. Altruistic is when integration is too high. Anomic is when regulation is too low, and fatalistic is when regulation is too high. For prelims, you must know these 4 types and the 2 forces. For mains, this framework is fantastic for analyzing social problems. Let's do a quick micro-revision on suicide. The single most important takeaway is this: suicide rates are a social fact. They are not to be explained by individual psychology, but by the levels of social integration and social regulation within a society. This gives us the 4 types: egotistic, altruistic, anomic, and fatalistic.
Okay, let's move to our final major topic, religion. In his last great work, Durkheim tackles what he saw as the most basic of all social institutions. And it's really important to understand his question. He wasn't interested in whether God exists or if one religion is true. His question was purely sociological. What is the essential function of religion in society?
And his answer begins with this fundamental idea. He argued that the one thing all religions have in common is that they divide the world into 2 completely separate domains. On one side, you have the sacred. These are things set apart, things that inspire awe and reverence. On the other side, you have the profane. This is just the mundane, ordinary, everyday stuff of life. This sacred-profane distinction, for Durkheim, is the very essence of religion. So, to get to the root of religion's function, Durkheim did something clever. He decided to study what he considered to be the most elementary or simplest form of religion he could find, totemism, as practiced by Australian Aboriginal clans. His logic was simple. If we can understand how religion works in its most basic form, we can understand its essential function everywhere.
And this leads to his incredible conclusion. Here's the crucial point. He found that the clan worshipped a totem, say, a particular animal or plant. But the totem wasn't worshipped for itself. It was a symbol of the clan. So when the clan worships the totem, they are unwittingly worshiping themselves. They are worshiping the power of their own social group. For Durkheim, God is nothing but a symbolic representation of society. That feeling of energy you get in a large religious gathering, he called that collective effervescence, is the feeling of society's power over the individual. All right, a quick micro-revision on religion. What's its function?
to create social solidarity. How does it do this? It starts with the division between the sacred and the profane. By studying the most basic form, totemism, Durkheim came to a radical conclusion. When people worship God or the sacred, they are really worshiping the transfigured power of their own society. It's a mechanism for reinforcing the collective conscience.
Okay, so we've covered the core of Durkheim's theories. To wrap up, let's take a step back and assess his work. We'll look at some major criticisms and then think about why he is still so relevant today. This is a very important part for developing a critical perspective for your mains answers.
Now, no thinker is without critics, and it's essential you know them for a balanced answer. First, some argue he overemphasizes society to the point that the individual seems like just a puppet. Second, his use of official statistics has been challenged. Critics say these numbers can be unreliable. And third, his functionalist approach is often criticized for focusing too much on social order and not enough on conflict and social change.
But despite these criticisms, his legacy is just immense. You can't overstate his importance. He literally gave sociology its mission. He defined its subject matter, social facts. He championed its scientific method. And he provided one of its major theoretical perspectives, functionalism. He truly is one of the founding fathers of the discipline.
So, I want to leave you with a final thought, a question to ponder, really. This is exactly the kind of thinking you need for the UPSC. How can you use Durkheim's concept of anomie today? Think about it in the Indian context. How might it help us understand the immense pressures faced by farmers during an agrarian crisis, or the challenges of rapid, chaotic urbanization? How does normlessness play out in modern India? All right, let's do one final complete recap to lock all of this in. We began with Durkheim's grand project, to make sociology a science by studying social facts as things. We then explored his theory of social evolution, from mechanical solidarity based on likeness to organic solidarity based on interdependence and the associated problem of anomie. We saw his method in action in his study of suicide, where he proved that suicide rates are a social fact governed by integration and regulation. And finally, we uncovered his theory of religion, where society itself becomes the object of worship. All in all, Durkheim gave us a powerful and enduring framework to analyze social order, social cohesion, and the challenges of modern life. That concludes our revision of Emile Durkheim.